Welcome to the Know Your Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Vipul Pasania, and today's guest is Sarah and Stewart. Sarah is a holistic health and peak performance expert who's helped many people get not only in physical, but in mental shape as well to understand their body from head to toe and from inside out. Now, the only reason she understands this is because when she thought she was at the height of success, she was at the rock bottom of health. And so she's been on her own journey to understand what it means to be healthy and to help others come alive as well. So Sarah, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm so grateful that you're talking about health and wellness in the entrepreneurship space. So very, very grateful.
No, most definitely. And it's an honor to have you here. I'm humbled that you've taken the time to share, because I think, you've got a lot of good stuff to say. And I think the first thing I guess I want to ask you is, what does it mean to be alive?
Alive. Wow, that's such a great question. So for me, I think it's very much in relationship to what I define as body freedom. It's not holding yourself back in doing anything in your life because of your body, right? So when we're physically alive, we feel good in our body, but we also have the mental and the emotional well-being to be able to go out and live our life. And so there's both parts of it. I think so many people that I find, we're postponing our life until we feel better, or we lose that weight, or we, have a little more energy. And I think that that's where we get ourselves in trouble. And I find that people who truly want to be alive, it's kind of like the reverse engineering, right? People who truly want to be alive are the ones who actually go and take care of themselves. The people who have those passions and the mission and the things they want to accomplish. And they're like, I want to stick around on this planet. They're going to do everything that they can to stay alive. And so what I have found in my work is that we have to reverse it. We can't focus on the physical first. We have to focus on our why. Why do we want to be here? Why do we want to be alive? Why do we want to stay on this planet? And then that is what will drive the motivation to actually do the health and wellness work. Because I'm one to admit that I don't love going to the gym. I don't love working out. I do it because it's good for myself, and that's what drives me.
I guess you've got your reason why. So there's a reason for you to go out and do it. It's funny because I see so many people that just eat so bad. Like they eat and drink so bad and they enjoy it. And I'm just thinking, how can you do that? When I've obviously got my why, and so do you. And that's why we force ourselves to stay disciplined in some shape or form. But why do you think some people are just not, bothered or not, cultivating the habits that they need to?
Yeah. So that's a really tough question, because there is truth behind really enjoying food, right? And enjoying a beer on a Friday night and enjoying a glass of wine. And so I think we have to get really clear on what drives the motivation of that experience, right? Or what's driving us behind, what is the driver behind what it is that's in front of us physically right now that we're choosing to put in our body. And I find that when people begin to do the actual emotional work, where they say, okay, why am I making this choice? When they make the choices like the pizza on a Friday night, or the binge eating, or the, lots of sugar and carbs and cake and all of these things that really don't serve us, that cause inflammation, that don't impact the physical body well. I see that there's an emotion that they're trying to block, or something that they're avoiding, or that they might just not be educated, right, on what that's actually physically doing to our body, our emotional states, our mental states, and actually impacting the physical outcome of chronic sickness. But I think that there's a reason behind it. I think that we know more nutrition information than ever before. You can Google what to eat, how to eat, what makes us healthy, what doesn't. We all know. I mean, most of us know we should all be eating the colors of the rainbow. We should all be eating clean food that's organic, that's not in packages. We all know that. We all know we should be moving and sleeping. And so why aren't we? And there's a reason behind that. Like I always say, there's a reason behind the weight. There's an energetic reason. And when we can figure that story out, that's when things begin to shift. But it is complicated, because I also enjoy a glass of wine once in a while. I enjoy certain types of food, but I know that the long-term gain, those things aren't going to serve me, right? And so again, it comes back to your why. Like, I want to be alive for a long time, and I want to do everything in my power to prevent chronic sickness based on my own choices. And then after that, it's just the game of genetics. And I think there's like a destiny of purpose of when we're not supposed to, you know, when, if something were to happen, but my choices are my choices, and I want to be in control to the extent that I can be.
It's interesting because there's so much information at our fingertips now,
Yeah.
and it's easy to find information, but it's easy to become lost as well. Like so many
Right.
of us, I think it was Tony Robbins who said, like, we have so much information, but we're craving wisdom, or we're starving for wisdom,
Right.
even though we're fed with so much information these days.
Right.
So like, where does someone start? Like someone who's listening
Yeah.
right now, they
Mm-hmm.
know they want to be healthy, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't really know where to look, because Google has so many results. Which one do I click on? Who do I believe?
Yeah.
Do I have milk?
Yeah.
Do I have meat? Like, what am I
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. So we're craving wisdom. We're craving connection with ourselves, and we're craving that space in ourselves where we have an intuitive pull, where we know intuitively what is best for ourselves. And deep within us, we already know that. Deep within us, we have that ability. I just went to a workshop this week in Arizona about the fact that we intuitively know things within 6 seconds. And that sounds crazy, right? Because most of us, like myself included, will take a week to think about something and ponder and meditate it on and decide whether it's good for me. But we actually, within 6 seconds of seeing something, we know whether or not it's good for us, if we're able to tap that part of our brain and know if that decision is going to serve us or not. I think we have to get really clear on bioindividuality, what works for someone isn't going to work for someone else. I don't think the problem necessarily is the amount of information. I think that the problem is that when we're looking at someone else doing something and it doesn't work for us, we feel guilt and shame. We feel sadness. We're like, well, my sister lost this amount of weight. My best friend is losing weight on this diet and it's not working for me. And I always say we have to take everything from a place of experimentation and gratitude. So what that looks like is looking at all the information and saying, okay, I see that I'm going to try this for a week and I'm going to experiment with my body. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to be grateful that my body has spoken to me and told me that this doesn't work, versus, oh, fuck, what do I do now? Like, I don't know what to do. I feel so bad. That doesn't work. Nothing's going to work. And it's about our mental state, right? When we're processing different things and when we realize something doesn't work, instead of going into that like, oh, fuck, now I have nothing left to work with. It's like, no, you have everything to work with, because now you're one step closer to knowing what works for your body and what doesn't. Like, I don't have a good, like something that was hard for me was like coconut doesn't sit well with me. It actually makes my skin break out. And there's a lot of different types of way that coconut's processed and so forth. And for me, that was a hard thing, because I'm like, coconut's in everything now. It's trending. Everyone's talking about how good it is for you. It doesn't do well for me specifically. So I had to look at that and just be like, I'm grateful that I know that. And I just leave that out. I don't drink coconut milk. I choose almond instead. And instead of being grumpy and upset because it's trending, like, I'm just like, okay, thanks body for telling me this. So that's my take on it. We have to look at bioindividuality. We have to use our bodies as experiments. We have to think that every single day that you discern something that isn't working is one step closer to what the big picture of everything that will work for you. And it doesn't take that long. Like, I see clients within 6 months, like, have a complete protocol that works for them. That is very different than anyone else's protocol, because your protocol will always be different than someone else's.
Yeah. So I guess it's just an individual journey for each person
Yeah.
to figure
Yeah.
out what's right for them.
Yeah.
So what was the journey like for you? Like, because I know
Yeah.
from reading your story that you weren't always in the best shape, or at least you thought you weren't. So can you paint a picture?
I've been in many different sides of the scale and many different sides of my health journey. I grew up in a really holistic environment. My parents were kind of hippies. They taught us about meditation and yoga as kids, and we were like hosting, these yoga classes in our basement before yoga was even mainstream, and growing wheatgrass, and like in a regular subdivision having a garden in the backyard, which was like unheard of. And so when my father developed terminal cancer, he opted to basically use food to heal this cancer and looked at different alternative treatments from around the world. And within 7 months, the cancer was completely gone. And I remember that moment thinking like, what the, like, how do people not know this? Like, why do the doctors not give a shit that this happened? Like, why are they not asking us everything? Like, I thought they were going to call us in and be like, tell us everything you did. They didn't care. And for me, it was so heartbreaking that it like sparked this light in me that I was like, I want to know everything about holistic health. So I went on this journey for myself, but at the same time, I was discovered to model, and I worked in the fashion world for 10 years. So on one hand, I'm like killing myself with starving myself and being told like, if you continue down this road, you're going to die. And on the other hand, I have all this holistic knowledge, and I had this like tennis match going on in my head of like, how do I use the wheatgrass shots and the yoga to basically balance like the late night partying and, you know, all these other things that I'm doing to destroy my body, whether it's like the laxatives or the excessive workouts. And so it's like this balancing game going on. And finally my body broke down and I gained a ton of weight, and I had to leave the modeling industry after a series of different things of like getting breast implant, like all these things that I was like trying to stay in the industry and keep going, that I was just damaging my body even more. I finally said I was done, and then I put on a bunch of weight, and I had to really figure out like, how do I find balance again? Because I can't use the quick fixes anymore. Like, I'm done. I can't do that to myself. And in that moment, it was like the greatest test of all time. Like, you're not using these quick fixes, so you have to actually go back to your roots and figure out this holistic approach. And what I learned from this whole process and this whole journey was, it's all in your mind. Like, I continued to eat healthy food, but I would walk past the mirror, get my picture taken, and it was like anxiety, like attacks, panic attacks all the time of like, am I going to gain weight? How are my hips going to look? Like all these things that I had been told for years working in the fashion industry. And I was like, I have to unlearn this process, and I have to fall in love with myself again. And how does that work? And it took several years. And then I changed my entire practice, my entire holistic health practice, to be about the mindset first, because without the driver behind our decisions being shifted, it doesn't matter. Like, I can teach you all the nutrition information in the world, and if you don't have the will or the desire to actually gravitate towards that, or understand why you're not, it doesn't matter. Because I was that person. I had all the knowledge, and I like pushed it aside. And so now it's just been my life's work to really educate, you know, and share that if you're struggling with weight, if you're struggling with health, like, start with the mindset and really think about, where are the stories coming from? Look at your childhood, look at how you grew up, meditate, be mindful, slow down, the things that no one wants to hear. It's a hard sell. Right?
Yeah, it definitely is, because we live I heard someone say, and I love this, is we live in like a microwave era. Like, everything we want in 2 minutes. Everything we want should be done in 2 minutes for us. We don't want to like be patient and learn and
Totally.
follow a process. So like, there's so many questions from what you're saying. And I guess the first one I just want to pick out is, what drove you to do modeling? And because you obviously knew, as you said, you had the knowledge there, but like, you weren't applying it to make it show in your life. And you sort of put this lifestyle of being in the spotlight. And I think there's so many like male and female individuals, especially with social media, that are striving for like, let's take the perfect picture or the perfect selfie. And does it exist? Let's hear it from someone who's actually been there and done that.
Yeah, no, and I'm writing a book on this entire topic. It doesn't exist. And that's what I'm trying to like communicate, is like, behind every picture is a story you have no clue about. Like, you have no clue. You have no clue how many pictures they took. You don't know the lighting. You don't know the Photoshop. You don't know how long they worked out at the gym. And the funny thing is, like, everyone is out there being like, this is my ab workout and this is what I do all day. But like, they're telling you they're part of the truth, but not the full truth. So you don't know the extent of all the other things that are happening. And we have to be very conscious and very understanding that what you're seeing isn't necessarily accurate. It might be for 1% of the pictures, but most of the time it's not accurate. And I know this because I lived it. And I lived a very big lie, right? Like I was part of the problem. I, was in different advertisements and I was selling that, do this and you'll be happy. And that's a very serious, scary, thing for culturally that we're selling, right? Like if you have this outside of yourself externally, you will be happy. And my goal, and what I think is happening now with younger generations, and I think we're looking at that and we're saying, well, we're getting all these things, but we're still not happy. So now we're doing the internal work to say, I don't need any of this bullshit. I'm still going to find peace and happiness right now inside of me without any of it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, women have wanted to look more beautiful for thousands of years, right? This is part of culturally what has transpired. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with wanting to lose weight or wanting to, have an 8-pack or whatever it is, but we have to look at like, is that defining our happiness? And if it is, we have to be very careful with that. And so I say, when you go on a weight loss plan, when you go to a plastic surgeon's office, when you go to make these decisions, first identify the pain of what's driving that motivation and work on healing the pain first. And when you do that, most of the time, like our motivation changes from external to health and wellness. And that's much more in alignment, right, with our highest good that we keep talking about with staying alive and wanting to do things on this planet. And so, yeah. And I know from experience, like this is me telling from a place of fighting every day to look a certain way. And to get back to your question of why I wanted to go into the modeling industry, I think about that a lot. I lived in a small town. It seemed like a great opportunity. I thought I had a good head on my shoulders. And there was something in me that was driving a motivation for external validation for 10 years of my life. And whether that's childhood programming, whether that was how I grew up, whether that was my relationship with my mother, I've worked on all of that. So there was definitely a motivation for validation that I found outside myself. So I was seeking love, which every day I wasn't getting. And then all of a sudden, like my career was over and I'm like, now I really have to work on myself, because the love that I was seeking, I never found. The validation I was seeking, I never found. Now I have to consider all of the things that I thought I would get from these things that aren't true. And it's a big, like, fuck you, like a big wake up call where you're like, okay, now where am I? And that was like a hard place. And I ran away and my mind went with me. And I still had to figure it out. Like, we're not going to run away from what's happening up here. So for years I tried to like run to the other side of the world and like travel and backpack alone. Well, my mind was with me. So didn't solve the problem.
Yeah, I love when you said that, because it's like, it's true. When you run away, you think, I'm going to run away from my problems or my life, but your mind comes with you, and that's where everything's programmed. Your memories are there, like your feelings are there, everything's there. So you're taking it with you. So how does someone like overcome that pain then? Because as you said, there's some sort of pain that needs to be identified for why you're driving to be a certain way or look a certain way or achieve a certain look. And what's the process someone should follow in that sense?
Yeah. So sometimes we do need therapy work, right? Sometimes we do need to dive deep with a therapy coach and pull out trauma and really dive back and relive certain experiences and shift the story that they no longer define us. I personally believe in doing reframe. I personally believe that we can up-level our lives in the moment, every single moment, if we choose it. I think so often we're living in the past that we don't give ourselves the opportunity, or we don't empower ourselves to believe that we can shift right now in the moment. And that's why I love meditation, is because it takes us out of fight or flight and moves us into rest or digest. And it allows us to rest our nervous system and say, this is a story. This is just a story. And I'm choosing right now in this moment how I'm going to respond to this story. And my behavior then defines so my feelings and my emotions do not have to define the behavior that I'm going to take if I'm going to allow myself to sit in this moment and really process what's happening and feel into these emotions. A lot of times we just get triggered, and then that behavior is the outcome of that triggering, and we don't know how to process actually what's happening. And so I'm just a huge believer that meditation is one of the greatest wellness hacks of all time. And it doesn't mean you sit in a temple all day long or under a tree. It means that you quiet your mind, you rest, you take time for yourself, you block out the world, you allow your intuition to come through. You learn to trust yourself. And that's the greatest gift that you can give yourself. And to say, okay, this isn't my story. This is my mother's story. This is my father's story. This is my family's story. I'm choosing to cut the cord, break the story, start again, move forward with a new story, move forward with a new life. And beyond that, we see like meditation is impacting our physical well-being. When we feel better, make better decisions. And I think, when we look at making a decision out of fight or flight versus out of rest and digest, if you're making 35,000 decisions a day on average, think of if you were to up-level just a few of those decisions. Think of if you were to make those decisions from clarity, from peace of mind, from a place of centered, grounded space. Like, how much better would your life be? And that's why I think it's a great hack. I think it's just, an amazing, amazing opportunity to say, like, I don't have to have these feelings, emotions drive my behaviors anymore.
I try and implement meditation on a daily basis as well, and it definitely helps you feel like a lot more grounded and centered. And it's funny because I usually do it before bed, maybe for about 15 minutes, and you fall asleep like a baby. Like if you just focus on deep breathing, you just naturally, I just naturally doze off, and it's the best sleep ever. So, if for those who haven't tried it, they should definitely try and implement. And it's not, you don't have to sit there for an hour, like 5 minutes, just to build up, focusing on the breath, and then I guess extending it more and more over time. So if someone hasn't meditated before, or they haven't got a set routine in the morning or in the evening, how would you set them up to understand how to implement it, and then also how to meditate? There's so many different ways to do it.
Yeah, and there's so many different, and I am a strong believer in finding what feels good for you, right? Like, you really have to do some research and figure out what feels good for you. I think the first thing is just learning how to regulate your breath. There's an amazing app called Stop, Rethink that just allows you to do that. Also, like, we shame technology. We're like, technology is so bad for us, right? Well, technology actually can be one of the greatest things in the world. And what I found is, like, having different meditation apps on your phone where you can, like, for example, with women I work with who have these sort of panic attacks in a dressing room, or when they're at dinner, go in the bathroom, breathe for 5 minutes, take a break, walk out, take your own space, and learn how to use these different apps to basically support you throughout the day. And so I think it's about going back to bio-individuality, back to what feels good for you, and going online and exploring and being like, this is going to be an amazing experience where I go and I look at different techniques and I learn about different techniques, and you might be drawn into one or another. Like, I personally have a coach that gives me a mantra, and when I do my mantra 2 times a day for 20 minutes each time, and then it took me a year working with him to get my mantra. Then it took me another year to get a new mantra. And then it took me this, like, period of time to go to India with him. And, like, it's this whole process. And for me, that felt so in alignment. Like, I was like, I want to work with someone with this experience. Other people, they just want to put it on their phone, and do 5 minutes of deep breathing. And we think that we have to let go of all of our thoughts. We don't. We can just literally come back to center and say, okay, I'm aware of this thought going through my mind. I'm not going to attach to it. I'm not going to choose a behavior because of it. It's not going to trigger me. I'm just being aware of it. Okay, next thought. And I think so often people quit because they think they're failing. It is okay to have thoughts. That is completely normal. You should be thinking, they should be going through your mind. Having thoughts does not mean you're failing at meditation.
So it's all about figuring out what works for you. There's no real right or wrong.
I don't believe so. I mean, I think it's great to have consistency with it. I think it's great. We see, specifically in my work, I see that the more that you practice your meditation, there's increased compassion, self-love, decreases anxiety, depression, stress levels. It improves, productivity, mental clarity, all of these amazing things. So when you do it more, you're going to see the outcome. I don't think it's one of those instantaneous things. You see it right away, but I definitely think just beginning, and there's some great resources I can give you. Emily Fletcher is an amazing coach, and she has a 2-week program online. My coach, Chandresh from Break the Norms, has a program. Like, there's different teachers, and I recommend just starting. I think that's the hardest part, just starting, and sitting with yourself in the morning and at night, and closing your eyes and just resting and breathing, and noticing what comes forward. And then I also recommend having a journal where you can jot down notes and free flow and write your thoughts and your feelings as they're being pulled from your subconscious mind. Because what most people don't know is that our behavior is driven from our subconscious, and our subconscious drives 95% of our behavior. And when we can't understand, right, all these imprints from our whole life. But in free flow writing, in meditation, things come forward that we can then process and say, okay, this was an experience I had when I was 5. Oh yeah, I remember that teacher telling me that I was larger than the other girls. Okay, yeah, I remember that impacted my weight at that time and how I felt. Oh, okay, now I can move forward and forgive that person for shifting that experience for me that impacted the rest of my life. So it's this process of identifying what's imprinted, then forgiving it, then moving forward with your life and saying, that's not my story anymore.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So it's a more of a journey of self-discovery and figuring out what, the roadmap that's been set in your mind. Because I guess no one else is going to have the same one. You need to figure out what's going on in your mind. And once you do, you can have better control over the outcome of how you're going to go about changing that.
Yeah. And so many of us are scared. Like, we're scared of that, right? We're so terrified. Like, oh my God, what am I going to discover? You're not going to discover anything that isn't going to release something or let go of something that's going to shift your life. It's only going to be beneficial. And if it feels terrifying, that's when the therapist comes in, the coach, the support team, community, friendship, people to come and help you move through it. But in your discovery, you actually create this spaciousness and this opportunity to live your life free of whatever it is that's holding you back.
So let me ask you this. For someone who focuses on holistic health and not just one area of health, when you get ill and you come down with some sort of illness, whatever it might be, what's the first thought that goes through your head? Because for most people, it's, what tablet solves this problem? Where, I need to go to the doctors. What goes through your head first?
Oh my gosh, you asked the best questions. I think, so if I get a sore throat, I think to myself, okay, what has my week looked like? Have I been stressed? Is my body worn down? Am I not being able to communicate something that I truly want to share? Because your throat chakra, it's about communication. So you might be blocked off from being able to communicate something. I look at my emotional body, like, what have I been feeling? Am I angry at someone? Am I holding something back that I need to say? Am I, what else do I look at? Let's think. I look at every area. I'm like, and then I piece it together. So relationships, right? Career. How am I relating to my career right now? My home, my community, the people around me, my staff, what's going on with them? I had an experience where like my entire team, something happened, like it was like 2 months ago, like crazy things started happening. It was like this weird energy or something. And then I ended up getting sick, and I'm like, wow, I'm like taking on this like overwhelm of everyone else's responsibilities. And so it was like taking that responsibility and looking like, okay, and my body's getting worn down. How do I give myself a little bit more self-care? I look at my sleep. I look at my nutrition. Have I been taking care of myself from the nutrition side of things? I look at detox. Have I done quarterly detoxes? Have I taken time to rest? I look at movement. Have I been moving? I look at all these different areas, because if I just pinpoint like, oh, I probably got sick because so-and-so is sick or people around me are sick, then it's kind of placing the blame on them versus taking the responsibility for my own immune system and my ability to hold myself up and have the immune system that could fight off, right, that sickness. And so I think when our vibration and our energy decreases, we are susceptible to sickness, because we're just energetic beings. And we really need to look at all of those things. And so, and with that being said, it's looking at them from a place of like love and compassion, and not going down the rabbit hole of like, oh my God, I haven't been able to communicate to my husband when I need, and like my staff's sick. Like, it's like not going down that rabbit hole, but just gracefully looking at all the areas and saying, yeah, I could do some more self-care right now. Yeah, I could take 10 minutes for myself and take a hot bath. Yeah, I could meditate again today. Yeah, I need to take a few more deep breaths, and I need to do some forgiveness for this person. There's a very fine balance of like the rabbit hole of like going down the rabbit hole and being like, oh my God, everything's falling apart. But that would be, that's where I would start.
Yeah,
and it happens. It happens.
It makes a lot of sense, because when one area of your life is not in check, for whatever it might be that you're trying to focus on,
Mm-hmm.
that's when the rest of it falls apart. And then you end up focusing on the wrong thing, thinking, oh, I want to fix this. But like, for example, your work or your business. But if you're not sleeping properly, you're not making decisions properly. And so the work might not be the issue, but it's the fact that you're not sleeping, your brain hasn't recovered, and you're not making decisions from a place of clarity. So
100%.
when I started understanding that, it made so much sense that actually I don't need to just go to the doctor. I don't want to go to the doctor, because he's trained to just learn from a textbook, to give us medicine. And that's great. But there are other areas that he may not have asked about. Like, why isn't he asking me about food? Why isn't he asking about sleep? Why isn't he asking about stress, exercise, all of these things? And so I guess the other interesting thing I wanted to ask you was, if you had the chance to recreate the healthcare system, like what would you like to see happen? Or what's missing?
Oh gosh. I think we have to really become conscious of, so definitely the holistic approach. We have to really be able to look at every person individually. I think caring about the person, right? Like, I have a really big focus in my practice to have a very heart-centered approach. And what I mean by that is caring about the person that is sitting in front of me, genuinely caring and wanting what's best for them. I think the problem is doctors usually have, I think it's like a minute in communication before they interrupt and ask the next question. Like, people don't have enough time to even share what's going on. And I think the model needs to change, where we care about the individual. We care about everything happening in their lives. And we look at the mind body and we say, how is the mind impacting the body? How do we support them in creating a lifelong protocol versus immediate Band-Aid, right? The immediate Band-Aid approach. Because the problem with the Band-Aid approach is that you might feel better, but you're suppressing a sickness that is going to cause chronic sickness in the future. And I see this so often, right? We're like, how do we move faster? But the end result, when your body's inflamed and acidic, is chronic sickness. And so we really have to shift to looking at prevention. We really have to look at why the mind body matters. We really have to look at why decreasing stress matters. We really have to look at like taking time off, self-care, all of these things that just feel very much neglected, specifically in America, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's something that's going to, I guess, come over time as people start to question what else is out there for them, why they aren't getting better, or why they aren't happy with the results they're getting. So,
Yeah.
could you share a couple of stories, I guess, from your own clients or people that you've helped? Because obviously, the people who are listening maybe just be the average individuals who are, are trying to figure out how to best increase their health and wealth. So maybe like just from a guy's perspective, and then maybe from a girl's perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I always share when people come to me, and one thing I like to really acknowledge, is people always ask me, like, what is the number one thing that people struggle with? Like, what is it? Like, what is the challenge? And I always say it's themselves. Because when we look at celebrities and we look at people who have everything, right? They have all the money in the world, and they can get the chef, and they can, because a lot of people say, well, I don't have the money, right? I can't afford all of the things that the celebrities do. I live in Beverly Hills area, right? West Hollywood in LA. And I see this, right? Where people have everything, but they're still not doing the things that matter. And so, like, for example, I had a client where I went into her home, and she had literally like everything she needed, right? She had the elliptical machine. She even bought a sauna. She had like a wall of supplements. She had the greens in her fridge, and the water filter, like literally everything that you could imagine to set herself up for success. But nothing was being used. Like the supplements weren't opened. And like, for me, it's heartbreaking to see this, but then also recognizing that, well, why aren't you being motivated? And it took us time to really dive into her story and what was the reason, and her unworth. And it really came down to unworth. It really came down to this idea she did not feel worthy of being healthy. She did not feel worthy of living a life of health and wellness. So she was putting up this facade, right? That she was, but yet she wasn't using anything. And so it took some time to define, well, why don't you feel worthy? How do we move and shift your experience in life so that you do feel worthy, and that you do come home and you're driven to use all the things that you have in your life? And people will say, well, I don't have the money for things. Well, I can tell you, when I was broke and trying to figure out my health, I could still go out and walk every day. I could still meditate. You don't need money for that. You can still go to the farmer's market and buy organic food at a cheaper price. It takes a little more effort, right? So there's things you can do even if you financially don't have all these things. But I share that story because a lot of times we use that excuse, right? That like, well, I just can't, I don't have everything. Well, even if you do, that doesn't mean you're going to use them until your mindset shifts. For men, what I see a lot is the entrepreneur driven to make all this money, and I'm going to be healthy when I make all the money, because then I'll have money to buy my health back. Well, that doesn't always work. And I always share that, like, if you can think of your life from a place of long term, right? Like, okay, how do I be healthy for the rest of my life, versus I'm going to work, like segmenting your life to work now, play later, health later. Like, we kind of have these things where it's like, let's work, make all this money, then play with all this money, and then care about my health at the end of the life when I don't, I can't buy my health back. Chronic sickness, there's times you cannot buy your health back. And so it's shifting that mindset. And that mindset comes from childhood stories of, I didn't have anything. I'm scared that if I don't make all this money, I'm going to live with nothing. And so we have to define what it is that's blocking the health from being the priority. And so I say, if you're striving for the money, the success, the fame, all of those things, really get clear on what is the motivation behind that. And I can most likely guarantee that that's fear, that's pain, that struggle from childhood. Those are things that are driving that motivation, versus I want to be alive. I want to have freedom to do what I want and be healthy and enjoy life. Like, we have to really look at what is the motivation behind our action. And most of the time we're driven by fear. Sadly, most of the time we're driven by pain, most of the time. And that's built successful companies, of course. But I think we have to become very conscious that at a certain point, we can't buy our health back. We can't buy our relationships back. We can't buy our peace. There's things we just can't buy back.
It's a big sacrifice. And
huge sacrifice.
Yeah. And what have you seen that's, I guess, the most interesting challenge? Something that I guess you didn't expect from a client, and you were like, can I actually help this person? Like, is this person helpable? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of really profound shifts and a lot of really profound, where people not that I didn't expect, because when people are ready to do the work, the teacher appears and they're ready to do the work. But like, for example, I had a girl in college who, she was so excited to go to college, and I was like, this girl seems like she's ready to party and have fun and be that college girl. And it was the complete opposite. She was just like, I want to get through college and I want to be healthy and I want to figure out how to have dorm food that's like healthy for me. And I want to still move every day. And, I don't want to fall into this trap where you just like assume that you're going to gain 15 pounds when you're going to college. She's like, I really want to be conscious of that. And that's what motivates me every day. Like, that is what drives me, are the people who are like so committed to their health and well-being, but they just need a little bit of support to be like, how do I create the systems? How do I shift my mindset so I don't go into these stories? Because most of the time it's a story. It's like, you have to gain weight when you get older because your metabolism decreases, or, your metabolism slows down. Your metabolism slows down at 2% every 10 years. So it's a story, right? It's an excuse that we make because everyone is saying that. And so what drives me are the people who are like, here's culturally what's happening. I don't want to be part of that story. What do I do instead? And that's what wakes me up and excites me every day. And this was like, this girl she was just such a beauty to work with, because it was just so fun to be like, she's like, that's not going to be me. How do I not have that be me?
Because I guess the person is so driven like that. I guess as a teacher, you almost feel like, I want to help this person. Like, I will go out of my way to help this person because she wants to see the results and she's invested in herself. So I guess, like, what else have you found from your perspective and understanding of health that as us as a society or culturally just isn't true about health?
So I think, let me think. A couple of things. So I think a lot of times, we talked about this before, that you're the leader of your own health. We look outside of ourselves and we think that all these other people are experts and we give everyone else the power. But the problem with that is that when we give everyone else the power, we also blame them and we don't take responsibility for ourselves. So it's very easy to place blame on our personal trainer, our health coach, our meditation teacher, like that diet that didn't work. Oh, they promised me I would lose 10 pounds in 10 days. I didn't. I guess it's not me. It's the diet, right? And so I think there's this reframe that can happen where I'm the leader of my own health. I'm in control. I take responsibility. And from that place of empowerment, there's no more blame. And so you wake up every day like, what do I need to do today to be healthy because I'm in charge? I also think we have to be very conscious that we are not experiencing our health individually, we're experiencing it collectively. So as we make better decisions, we are casting a vote on companies, we're casting a vote to the world, we're casting a vote politically, we're casting a vote to our leaders of what we want and what we desire. And when we make healthier choices, we are choosing for the planet what's better. And I don't think people get that, right? I think people are like, oh, it's all about me. And I'm like, no, when you choose organic food, it impacts the entire process in which the food's brought and how it's farmed and like everything, right? It not only impacts your waistline and your weight and like how you feel and your energy, but it's impacting us collectively as a species, right? As humans on this planet. And we need to do more. We need to make decisions for ourselves, but we also need to make them for the planet. I think that's often forgotten. I think the holistic approach is often forgotten, where we look at everything in my life impacts my health. And if I am in a relationship and we're angry every night and fighting and screaming, my body, my immune system cannot be strong. Like I cannot be strong in this environment. If I'm not happy and creative and joyful and inspired at my job, my body will not stay healthy. And I'm not talking about instantaneous health. I'm talking about long-term health. Like this is what causes sickness in the long run. It's lack of inspiration, joy, happiness, love, creativity, community, friendship, family. Like it's not just the food on our plate. It's not just the water. It's not just the movement. It's everything. And we have to remember that. So those are a few things, like the reframes that I really work around.
It's interesting. I've never heard about the perspective you gave about making a collective decision, because it makes so much sense when you look at it from a bird's eye perspective. If everyone's making a collective decision and putting a force behind a certain decision within health, naturally other people are going to have to start to work around that, and then the businesses will start to shift their focus on what's buying, what people are going to be buying, what's selling, what makes money, what doesn't, and it gives it power. But I guess the struggle then comes in, would you say, educating people so that they are collectively making the right decision?
Yeah, it's educating, and there's a huge educational curve, like that does need to happen. I think education, but I also think we all have a responsibility to, if we know what's good for the planet, if we know what's good for ourselves, if we know what makes us happier, healthier, like share, tell the world, write that on Facebook instead of a rant or like F you to the politics, like whatever, like be that voice behind it. Because if we had everyone sharing, hey, I woke up today and I had a glass of warm lemon water and I feel so alive. And then I had organic food at lunch. And then now I'm going to, do you know, the world would change like that? Like instantly, if we were all just sharing positive things all day long versus, oh my, like ranting about who knows what. Like I don't even own a television. So like, I can't give you very good examples because of that, because I'm like,
there's
I don't
so
want
many
to hear
complaints.
about the news. The complaints and all of these bad things that are happening. Like I want to stay focused on the positivity, what's happening on the planet. But I think there's an educational process. I also think, in terms of schooling, and I do see schools shifting this. I do see a lot of work being done around this, which is incredible. The slow food movement is really big. It's growing quickly. But it comes down to us. I just went to this meditation, and they were saying, like, you can go out and pick it and all day long, or you can, but what are you doing, right? What are you doing in this moment every single day? What choices are you making? And what are the positive things that you are sharing that creates the little ripple effects from one person to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think we have to be very conscious of that. Like, we don't know the power of ourselves. We think we're, we don't have any idea the ripple effect that we can have on another human. And it's important for us to begin to recognize that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's again, it just comes back to this whole thing about self-discovery and understanding what's good for us, and then being able to spread that to others and say, look, this is what's worked for me. I feel fantastic. Why don't you look into it yourself and see what works for you? Right. So before we get into the final few questions, I guess, your whole journey that you've been on, up and down, brought you to this point. What surprised you most about health? Like one of the things that you thought, oh, I never thought this is the way it would be, or I never thought, like, I never expected this thing to work.
Yeah. So one of the most incredible things I discovered for myself was when I was in New Zealand and there had just been an earthquake and I was mountain biking and I flipped my mountain bike and I shattered my elbow and my forearm. And I remember them saying to me, like, you will never do yoga again. And I'm like, they're like, you'll never be able to put pressure on your arm. Like, it's over. And I told myself, this isn't true. Like, I'm not listening to this doctor. This isn't true. I ended up backpacking for another month. I went home. I saw a doctor in America and they pretty much said the same thing. Like, the chances of you really being able to do yoga again, Pilates, these sort of things where you're putting pressure on your arms, probably isn't the best. And I kept in my mind visualizing my arm getting better. I kept in my mind just visualizing myself being able to do a handstand again and doing yoga and being able to have this experience for a healthy arm. And I think, maybe so my strongest belief is the placebo effect works and that the power of our mind, it has the ability to shift outcomes. And when I look at all of the people that I've interviewed in terms of being able to heal chronic sickness, heal terminal illness, when I look at my dad's story versus other people's stories, the one thing he said to me and the one thing I experienced from being able to heal my own arm was, he's like, I believed that it would work. I didn't listen to the doctors who told me it wasn't going to work. I didn't listen to the people that told me I was going to die. I didn't even hear that. I didn't even allow it to process in my subconscious. I just pushed it aside and said, that's their story. This is mine. And for me, that's been the most incredible thing of all of the clients I've worked with, everything I've seen in my life, the power of the mind to believe in something that no one else believes in. Having faith in something you don't see now is what drives us, right? It drives our health. It drives our well-being. It drives our experiences to be able to make those things that people think are not possible happen. And so for me, that was one instance, but it's been many things. It was my eating disorders. It was hitting rock bottom, them telling me I wasn't going to get better, believing I was always going to, like, having them say, you're always going to have this eating disorder, me believing that it's not the same, knowing I would be free of this anxiety someday. It's just always been the belief that I would get better. And that's, I think, the missing piece most of the time when you go and see a doctor.
Yeah, it's not something that they talk about at all. Like, from my experience anyway, they don't really talk about the mind. It's more about looking at the physical symptoms. And I guess that's where it's down to us to do our own research and think, actually, what else is there? What other answers are out there for me?
Yeah.
And that's exactly the areas you're focusing on. But one thing you mentioned, actually, that piqued my interest, which I did want to ask you earlier, but I completely forgot to. What's an eating disorder? Like, what actually goes through your head when you look at food? What do you see? Because most people think, oh, I'm hungry, like I want to eat that. That tastes amazing, so I'm going to have it. What goes through your head at that time?
So with my experience of having an eating disorder, it was very much, there was an experience of body dysmorphia where I didn't know how thin I actually was. And I was always telling myself that I was heavy or bloated or overweight or so forth. And I was always in fear that if I even gained an inch, I was going to lose what was driving my life. So for me, it was very much driven on income. Like, if I were to gain weight, I would not have the income to sustain my life. And I didn't know what else I could do at that time, which was just a story that I made up. So for me, it was like, this food is evil. It's bad. It's calories. It's going in my body. It's going to do something that is going to cause me harm. And that's another reframe that I work through is food is one of the most beautiful, nourishing things on the planet. You get to eat 3 times a day and nourish your body. Like, how beautiful is that? And I had to go through all these reframes of, like, food is evil. It's the devil. It's going to make me fat. It's going to put it to this 3 times a day is a blessing. It is the most beautiful experience I could possibly have. And I'm going to cherish it. And I'm going to sit and I'm going to bless my food. And I'm going to be grateful for every single bite. And like, for a long time, I was lying to myself. Like a long time, I'm like, I'm so grateful. But it wasn't, it's comical now, but I have a lot of sensitivity to it. But it was like lying to myself and being like, but over time, now I sit down for a meal and I'm like, I am so thankful that I get to choose what food is in front of me. I'm so thankful this food's going into my body. It's nourishing me. It's, it's taking care of me. It's giving me energy to sustain my life and do the things I love and be in a beautiful relationship and have amazing friends. And that's what shifted. And so everyone has a different experience with eating disorders that go through them. And I think there's a lot of work being done right now to shift what is the leading cause of death for young women in our culture. And it's so, so important that we work on the mindset and we work on the mental side of it rather than just the physical, because that's when relapse happens. And for me, that's what almost happened, where I had physically looked better, but I actually wasn't better. And so the doctors gave me she's better, but I actually wasn't. And I think we have to be very conscious of that. And luckily there's a lot of amazing humans doing work around that right now.
I guess it's more about eating the right food than not eating any food. Like I guess that's what you're saying, right? Like it's about making the right choices, not just saying, oh, I don't want to do this altogether. Let me just completely cut it out of the equation, and that's what's going to help me. Like you end up just looking worse and not feeling right, because it's not normal, I guess, for us to not eat. It just doesn't work with us. So just to get into the final few questions, then, with everything you've learned now, is there anything different you would tell the 18-year-old Sarah?
I would tell her to keep meditating. So when I was a kid, I was meditating, and then I got too cool. Like I was too cool to do yoga and meditate when I was in my teenage years. I rebelled against everything my parents taught me, which is completely normal, right? As a teenager. But I would tell her, like, keep meditating and choose people in your life that are going to inspire you and be there for you, because there was a time in my life where I had no one, and I had no one that I could turn to during the sickness. And that's when my coach Chandresh came in and really supported me through this process. But I would have said, keep a community around you, keep friends around you, continue to have a relationship with your parents, don't push people away, let people help you. People want to help you, and be willing to work on yourself and continue to meditate.
Yeah, it's some good advice, because I guess at any age that you start doing something like that, it's just going to center you for the rest of your life, because it just becomes a daily habit. But it's interesting. I know we don't really have to go into this now, because I guess we're running out of time, but it's interesting because you would think, like, based on what we know now about society and what people are heading towards, yoga, meditation, your parents are doing all of that, yet you still felt the need to rebel and go against all of the good lessons, so to speak. So I guess everyone just has their own journey, don't they? Just to figure out what's right for me, even if you've been given quote unquote good parenting. So,
right. You don't, and that's what I share. I share that if I didn't go into the modeling world, there's no guarantee that I would not have fallen into this trap of eating disorder. So that's why I've taken a lot of the blame away from the industry, and I'm not, blaming them. It was my choice. I chose to live this way. I chose to experience the modeling industry. I chose to stay in it for 10 years. I chose what I chose because of what was happening in my mind. And so there's no blame. It's just, let's become more conscious and aware humans so that we can make better choices, so that we don't have to experience this, these painful things.
Hmm. Yeah. And the second question is, if there was one statement that you could write and put in a time capsule for generations from now to read, what would that one
Mm.
statement be?
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a lot of pressure. One, one, one statement. Um, um, my worth isn't defined by my weight. I am, I define my worth, and I am worthy. My worth isn't defined by my weight. I am, um, yeah, my worth isn't defined by my weight. I define my worth and I am worthy.
That's amazing. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, how do I say this? But yeah, I think it's so important, right? Because right now, culturally, what's happening is we're defining our worth by our weight, and what's we're seeing the body positive movement. We're seeing these things really transpire, which is incredible, and we're seeing companies shift, but it needs to happen more. And I think for the younger generations, like, we really have to become conscious that we cannot put our lives on hold because of our body weight, because if we do that, we're preventing so much positivity, and we're preventing all the things that our earth, like our planet, needs right now. We need creative light workers. We need people to go out and like come up with inventions and do incredible things and live their lives and spread love. And if you're not doing that because of your weight, or because of your body image, or because of your insecurities, like, we're postponing the evolution and consciousness of this planet, and we all have to be responsible for that. So yeah, so I would say
yeah.
my worth is not defined by my weight.
I love that. Yeah, because you're then, I guess, thinking about self-love and the fact that you are worthy to start your journey now, that there's nothing to wait for, you know.
Nothing,
So,
nothing.
and the final question is, after living many, many long, happy years and healthy years, you come to the end of your life, whatever age that might be. What's the
Yeah.
legacy you hope to leave behind it by that point?
I wake up every day, and this is where we get tricked by numbers, right? We think, if I have this huge Instagram following and I have, a million people in my movement or whatever, and my coach has always told me, if you wake up every day and you just inspire one person to shift their life, you have done something so incredible. And so for me, like that's my goal every day, is just to wake up and talk to one woman, one young girl, like, and yes, I want to share with the masses, but at the end of the day, like, not getting caught up in the numbers and just continuing to do my thing every day and tell people that they are worthy of the life that they love right now in the body that they have. And and I hope when that time comes, I can look back on my life and say, yeah, I made a difference. I really did inspire people to shift their mindset around their body. And what happened from that was a ripple effect of incredible things that they got to do with their lives.
Yeah, and it's amazing because I guess you've already started doing that for your own work. First, having the courage to do it for yourself, and then having the courage to to help other people take responsibility for their lives. So, if people want to follow your journey, your story, and your content, what's the best places for them to do that?
Yeah, thank you. So my website is Sarah, SARAH, and ANNE, Stewart, STEWART.com. And I'm on Instagram. I get back to everyone. So if you have a question, just write me back. I will respond. It might not be immediately, but I will respond. So just send me a DM if you have any questions. And I would love to hear from you if you have questions or anything I can support you with, or whatever, just send over a message.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share. It's been amazing, and I definitely hope we get a chance to do it again. And I'm sure
Yes,
people are going to have to listen back and
I
take
would
lots
love
of
that.
notes.
I would
Yeah.
love that. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful.